Good morning. Can everyone hear me? If you can just react. Thumbs up if you can. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for confirming. So we're just going to jump right into it today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the April edition of SLEC Africa webinar series. Today's session is titled Built for Africa, Rethinking Platform and Product Strategy. This is a conversation that sits at the core of sustainable growth in the African gaming industry. For many operators over the years across the continent, success is not just about getting your license right or getting your market entry strategy right. It is and has become increasingly about technology decisions, the platform we choose, the product we deploy, and the partners we engage ultimately determine scalability, the user experience, compliance, and profitability of your business. Yet, a recurring challenge has persisted. Many systems deployed across African markets are not originally designed for the reality that they are expected to operate in. In Africa, you've got infrastructure limitations. You've got evolving payment ecosystem. You have the dynamics of the player behavior, which changes rapidly, and then the changing regulatory framework. The question that every operator, everyone in this industry must ask is, are the platforms truly built for Africa or simply adapting to it? And if they are adapting to it, how well are these platforms adapting to African reality? In this session today, we will be talking about what fit to market really means in the African context. We'll be talking about technology choices on operations, the impact it has on operation compliance and growth. We'll identify common pitfalls that operators face when selecting their platforms and providers. And above all, we will be highlighting considerations that developers, providers, and operators must bear in mind to better serve the market and the African audience. To explore these issues today, I am joined by two guest speakers who bring perspectives from both technology development and operations to the conversation. I have the pleasure to introduce Adriano Amade, the Managing Director of Correct Tech Nigeria Limited, who has over 25 years experience in the iGaming and betting industry. And 10 years of those 25 years has been focused on the African market. He will be bringing his perspective from an operator-focused point with practical understanding of the realities, challenges, and expectations within the African gaming market. All the way from Kenya, we are joined by Philip Mudenyo, who is the Director and Chief Technology Officer at TouchVerse Innovations, a homegrown local technology provider. Philip, he's a software developer with over a decade experience in designing, developing, and deploying large-scale, high-traffic software systems. He brings deep insight from the technology and platform development side, based on his experience building and scaling gaming solutions across African markets. Together, these gentlemen will provide a view of both sides of the ecosystem, the builders of technologies and the users who rely on it daily. Now, before we go right into it, a few housekeeping rules. This session is being recorded and will be shared and publicized after the webinar. Please feel free to drop your questions or comments in the chat. From time to time, I'll go in there. We will try to address them during the question and answer segment. As if time permits us, we will also take questions directly from you, our audience. Now, we encourage you to make this an interactive session, even though you cannot speak unless you are given the permission. You can interact by sharing your thoughts in the chat or using your emojis and reactions as we go along. With that, I welcome my guests. Welcome, Adriano and Philip. Thank you for being here. Now, I will just go right into it. When we say built for Africa, what does this actually mean in practical terms? I'll start with you, Adriano, so you can bring for us the perspective of the B2C, that's the business to customer, on this issue.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having us, Fadeki, and welcome everybody to the session. Yeah, so I think to start with, to understand the discussion is obviously understanding very much the landscape in which you're entering the market, right? Obviously, for the purpose of this discussion, it's Africa, but it's really important within Africa to understand each country, its local environment, because obviously that local environment is what's going to determine your strategy, your entry to market, and as part of that strategy, you got to look very carefully at exactly how your product is going to fit into that market, from many aspects, including the technical, payments, and UX experience, all the way to how it aligns with your overall strategy in terms of your brand and what you represent as a new entry coming into the market, all aligns accordingly. So I think in terms of the discussion is very key, and the focus will be on the product here, because it's the product, whether it's your in-house product and you're going for a B2C product, or whether you operate on the B2B side, which is where Philip is going to step in, where you're providing platforms to operators coming in. So the operator has to look very carefully into what options do I have, whether I'm going to build this platform myself, whether I'm going to use a third party, or whether I'm going to use a platform that already exists within the market itself that's adapted to that market, or try and do combine possibly a third party platform from outside the country that you're entering and try to adapt that platform accordingly to suit the market. So I think that the starting point is really to understand your strategy with how you're gonna, what product you're gonna choose, and see how you're gonna do that. And that's where I think Philip steps in very well here with the B2B, actually offering platforms for countries across Africa.
Right. Before I go to Philip though, just to highlight, yes, you have stated that, a new entrant, even an existing operator, must always consider as part of their strategy the options that they have. Do you want to build a proprietary platform, or do you want use a third-party platform? The reality is that many African operators use third-party white label platforms, right? So can you speak to that? In using that kind of platform, what would make that built for Africa? What will make it sit right, in Africa for the African operator?
Yeah, perfect. Great question. So of course, when you're looking to move into the African market, there's very, very important factors that you need to consider. And mostly it's the environment in which you're operating. I think we're talking mostly online here, right? So that online channel is going to be through mobile phone. And within the mobile phone industry, obviously across Africa, you've got to look at the channels in which your customers are going to communicate and engage with your platform, which is 95+% is going to be on mobile phone, right? As far as the data tells us. So then you got to look at, all right, so if my clients, if most of the clients are going to be channeling through mobile phone, what phones and what technology are they using to connect with you? Because obviously they're going to connect through a browser or an app, but before that there's a telephone. And if you look at the largest provider of mobile phones across Africa is, we know, a Chinese company called Transsion. They have 3 different brands. And within those brands, you've got different browsers, different apps. It's not your standard Samsung iPhone that you've got your stores where your Play Store or your App Store where you can download the app or you launch your Chrome. A lot of these come with pre-installed browsers. So you've got to really consider these factors because it's about the masses, right? You got to consider the mass market simply because when you're looking at utilizing third-party platform providers from outside, you are obviously going to enter into negotiations and agreements, and all of your costs, whether it's for the platform, the hosting, or your data feeds, and all the aspects of your platform that are required, your costs are going to be in US dollars or in euros, and everything that you're earning is going to be in our case, we're in Nigeria, or in Philip's case, in Kenya, right? So you got to look very carefully at the amount of revenue that you're going to generate and how you're going to be able to obviously cover those costs within your, you'll be looking at, your strategy, but ultimately you got to look at your 2-year, which is the critical period to try and get momentum. And I think it's incredibly important that those costs are factored in, because if you don't have the reach within the territory that you're operating, and you can only target a 10 or 15% of the market that's available because of the technical aspect of your platform that doesn't allow you to extend and penetrate further at that, let's call it the grassroots level, you've got to really be able to collect enough number of bets to justify those costs. And so it's incredibly important when you're looking at these platforms to make sure that the platforms are compatible with the devices, and the devices obviously the mass market devices, unless obviously you have a very particular strategy where you're focusing on a very particular segment. But in general, if you're looking to target the market, then obviously you've got to look at having a platform that can tap into those low-end phones. And it's not only the phones you got to consider, you got to consider the phone, you got to consider the data, and you've also got to consider the compatibility with it. So to answer your question, there's a lot of factors you need to look into when choosing, and obviously the pros and cons.
Thank you so much, Adriano. So I'm going to come to you now, Phil. Built for Africa, from a developer and provider perspective, what does that mean, especially in the light of some of the points that Adriano has raised? And these are some of the issues that operators and users grapple with, with respect to white label technology. So yes.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to have me here. And I agree with what Adriano has said. When you're building for Africa, you have to focus on the product. And for you to do that, you have to focus on the end users. And from the part of the platform provider, the focus will go mostly to the end users. How will they access the system? Will the platform be a usable platform to them? How will they reach out to the platform? And some of the things that Adriano has raised, in Africa we find a lot of these Chinese phones, they come with specific browsers that they also sell to the people who buy those phones. They give them tools on how to minimize their data. They give them tools how to manage their browsing. And you'll find that a lot of punters, they like these browsers. And when they access your platform, they want to use the same browser. So that becomes also key, that as you're looking for the platform, you have to make sure that the platform works accordingly across all the browsers. You may test with your own Samsung phone, a high-end phone. It will be okay, but if you take it to the low-end phones, you find that the platform is not usable. So the things that I'll look at mostly is in terms of the product. And also, apart from that, we also need to look at the resource consumption. A very good example in Kenya here, an average user will come to the site maybe with around 100 Kenya shillings. So with this one, they want to place a bet and they want to buy data to place a bet. So you find that if the cost of placing a bet is more than the bet itself, they may want to go somewhere else where they know, out of my 100 shillings, I can save something that I can increase my stake. So also you have to look at, is the platform, how does it consume in terms of resources, in terms of data? Is it well below the level that I want, or will I need a lot of data for me to come actually to the platform and place a bet? If the cost of the bet itself is more than the value of the bet, you find that the usability of the platform will be a bit off. So those are some of the things that we shall look at in terms of the product and how does it fit to the end users. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Phil, for that. Very interesting points that you have raised and made. It would seem like some of the non-negotiables should be one, ability to adapt to the infrastructural situation of most African markets. It should also take into consideration the fact that we're a mobile first. We skipped a lot of the, tech evolution and just went straight into mobile in Africa. And the majority of users are mobile users. But then for the tech in the African market, majority of that tech is built and tested in European markets. Practically speaking, what is the implication of this, the practical implication that we have seen, and how should we be moving, away from this? Because one thing you would hear many operators say is that, yes, I've got a provider, they're very slow, they're not responsive when it comes to changes we need to make on the platform. What are the reasons for this? Is there a disconnect between, the providers and the users, of this technology? Adriano, I'm coming back to you with that one.
Yeah. Well, very simply, because the providers of platforms that are entering the African market is relatively not new, obviously, over the last 10, 15 years, right? But previously they've existed within Europe and other territories. So these are platforms that have existed for a long time, right? And that have been built, right? And they're trying to adapt them now for the African market, right? Whereas when you look at Philip and what they're doing is building a platform built for Africa in the African market, right? So the challenge you've got as an operator coming in is that if you are going with somebody third party from Europe, right? Yes, there's a lot of adaptation and localization that's needed, as Philip has already indicated, right? And it's challenging, if I buy 10 mobile phones and I send them to my provider in Europe and say, look, these are the phones that my clients are using. Could you make sure that your platform is adapted and works on these phones? And they look at you and say, right, this is a new customer in Africa. He's not even generating any revenue now. How do I prioritize all of my resources to now focus on improving my product where I've got customers in Europe that are making millions? How do I shift my resources to focus on Africa? And I think that's one of the challenges you've got, is getting these third parties to shift their focus to the African market, because we still don't have a big enough customer to justify that work to get these products localized at that level, because it does require a lot of research and time, understanding the phone, understanding the systems that you've got to adapt, and then how do you get your platform that has all of this code, all of these images, all of this UX. I have to redo all of that for one customer that has potential. So I think that's one of the challenges you have as an operator in Africa, is getting the partner that you've chosen potentially to actually invest enough to adapt the product, because of these are already established organizations in Europe.
Right. So investing the time, you don't think, or not you now, the providers do not think that the African market is big enough or significant enough to invest the time, the resources required to build for a platform that would sit, quite well within the African market.
Yes, correct. So if you look at the major operators, the largest operators, which I've seen coming out of Africa, which are now becoming, if you look at the ones who are developing into super brands who have existed during that time frame, the majority of them all own their platform, which is, the operators being in control, and they've been able to adapt it. We've still not seen a brand which is utilizing a third party reach those levels of becoming, whether it's a super brand or a unicorn brand. I won't make names, but the larger operators that are succeeding on the fact that they've got control of their product and platform, and they can prioritize what's needed for the market. I think the challenge of potentially having third parties that have interests in other parts of the world is getting them to prioritize their strategy for your market, especially because most of us are entrants. So a lot of the companies which are established are well established in Africa already now, and any new entrant coming into the market will have to present a very solid strategy to their third party to convince them to prioritize resources and make that investment, because at the end of the day, it's about the cost. There is a significant investment required from the product side. And so if you're not covering that as an operator and you're getting your third party to cover that, you have to give some kind of assurance that you're going to support that strategy and bring back the return on investment.
Right. Okay. Understood. So we get it from the developer perspective. I'm coming back to you now, Phil. You heard what Adriano has said. Investing the time, the resources, that it needs to be justified before the West, as it were, the Western providers would invest the time and the resources. But for you as an African developer, and I'm very well aware that right now you are operating in about, across South Africa, East Africa, and both the Francophone and Anglophone speaking West African region. Do you as a local provider share the same perspective? And then being a developer, your cost element, we've talked about the disparity. Adriano did touch on the disparity in the currency that is being used, the currency of operation and then the currency of payment. Do you have these challenges? Do you agree with this? Or is that a reason to push for more homegrown providers?
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that you also find in terms of the global platforms is that sometimes a change has a lot of risk. It might be a small change, but from the developer's perspective, if you already have existing clients who are bringing in good revenues, and if I change one thing, it might be a small thing, but then because their downtime, then I'll be too slow to do the change. I'll need a lot of time to test, validate, and ensure that once this change has been moved to production or to the live site, it will not cause a downtime on the customers who are already okay. So that becomes another challenge, especially in the European platforms. They've been building this for years. They have spent like 10 plus years working on this. And now you are coming here, you want them to modify the flow. That means they're going to take another good time, first of all, to do it, then validate it, then to test it. And sometimes they may not be sure that that thing will actually work for you. So you find that the risk is too much. Apart from the cost, the risk of losing the revenue that you already have for the sake of this small change, that becomes a challenge. And also, coming to us, where we provide a platform across in Africa, we spend a lot of time analyzing the African market. We spend a lot of time knowing how to build the core platform and also to make allowance for customization without touching the core platform. That way, it allows us to have a custom feature for the West African market that is not applicable to the East African market, but at the same time, not touching the core system. And we did this from the ground up from day one. So we are able to make a provision for that. And that's what is making us a bit more flexible when it comes to handling customization. But we find that a global platform, how it was built, maybe then the market was almost similar across, and that's how it was built. But now Africa coming into place, it requires a lot of modification. It requires a lot of changes, adaptability to the different things that they keep on changing. A very good example in Kenya here in terms of regulatory integration, we have had 3, 4, 5 different versions that has been going. So it requires that from the platform perspective, we are also quick to adapt and change based on the regulator. But now you find that if you find a platform that has been worked on for years, and maybe it was built for a specific region, then making such changes, it becomes a hurdle because the risk is too much. Apart from the financial risk, the risk now becomes a lot, and you still need more time for you to be able to do that.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much for that, Phil. Very insightful. Now, before we move on from this, I would like to, explore. I would like us to explore some of the financial constraints, financial considerations. One, given the nature of the work that we do as consultants, right? We usually start out the journey with operators from the get-go. They seem to start out with significant budget, for their operations. They seem to have done a bit of research about the market that they're going into. And then, again, to currency disparity, to some of the conditions, that the conditions of use of this technology. For instance, the minimum monthly, which is set, which is benchmark across board. And then you've got other conditions in their licensing agreement, such as, data ownership, such as, a few other conditions, which I'll leave to you to highlight in this in this conversation. What exactly should operators be looking out for? Because they start out with this budget, it seems like they've dotted their I's and crossed their T's, and along the way they start to struggle, not because of their operational realities, but because of the tech and the conditions associated to the technology that they're using. Adriano, from an operator perspective, what has been your experience, in this regard?
Yeah, great question. So absolutely. I mean, the costs are always slightly, potentially overlooked, in that, the usually you look at it and say, okay, the cost of a license, and then you say, right, the cost of the platform. But it's when you start to add up the cost of the platform or your product or your platform, right? You're absolutely right. As you start up, you got the minimum monthly fees, right? But then you got to add, you got your hosting fees, right? You got your data, all your feeds, right? Depending on the package and what you want to offer. And then obviously somebody's got to do your trading, right? So you've got your managed trading services as well, whether you do that in-house or outsource it, right? So when you add up all of these costs, they are significant, right? And obviously, as anybody, the critical thing is, how do operators survive the first 24 months in order to reach break even if you add up all of these costs? So when looking at these opportunities, I can't reinforce. One of the things is every time I speak to people, it's when do you guys want to enter, and it's always immediately, right? Everybody's in a hurry to start as soon as possible. I think everybody's smiling now because it tends to be part of the industry, and that everything is today, tomorrow, and the next day. And I can't emphasize how important it is to get that strategically right, to speak to enough people out there, right? There's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of people offering products, whether it's products that they can build for you, whether it's in-house, you want to build it, whether it's third party, or whether it's a hybrid, right? But getting that right and aligning it with your expectation of your strategy, because you've also got to look at what's the name of your company and what's your strategy and what do you want your brand to stand out for, because that's ultimately what's going to differentiate you. At the end of the day, if we all have a platform that works, and we're all on the same pitch, and we have the same product with the same odds, right, and we have the same payments, then you've all got the fundamentals right. Okay, so then what's differentiating you is your uniqueness and your service and your marketing, right? And I think is, how do we get those three fundamentals to where they need to be, where you can have a product that you can afford for 24 months, right? In order to then get the marketing to do the work, which is drive your brand, what you represent in the market, which is unique, and what's your differentiator, right? Because at the end of the day, then it's all about pricing and payments. As long as I can register simply, deposit money, place a bet, get my money out, those are the three fundamentals. Everything else is what you've got to manage in terms of your costs and what you represent as a brand.
Right. Okay. So a bit of reality check here. Understanding that whatever product, whatever platform, whatever systems you've got in place, you're going to have to run it realistically for 24 months minimum before you break even, and you must have that from the get-go. So it also means managing your product expectations or offerings as well, what you're offering to the public. Now,
Correct.
Philip,
So
okay,
just to give an
go ahead.
example. No, but just to put it into perspective, right? So if you go full blown out, and you can go with the platform minimum monthly, go with your platform provider, which will give you all your pre-match, your how many live events, you would, we know that you're looking at packages of 50 to 60,000 euros a month, right? Compared to what if you could get that for 10 to 15,000 a month, right? That other money goes into your operations and your marketing. We're talking big numbers here for any startup, unless you want to really come in with a $10 million a year budget, right? And you say, I don't really mind these, it's not, we've got a big enough budget. But that doesn't apply to everyone, right? I think that applies to the few. The majority of people would be very conscious of their costs and how to get to that 24-month period, break even. And Philip's going to step in here, right? But these costs add up really significantly because these costs are high. The hosting costs, and the data feeds, the settling and the trading services, they add up. And if you don't have them, they're required, right?
Right. Thank you, Adriano. Philip, so over to you now. What we're hearing is you have to manage, as operators have to manage the expectation. But what I find is with most providers, they come with packages that says, oh, these are the games, these are the products we're offering. And out of the gate, you're deploying as an operator a system that has products that you probably don't have clientele for. You have products sitting on your platform that you're paying for, but that's not exactly adding to the bottom line. That's not generating anything. But one of the challenges has always been that perhaps the tech providers would insist that, oh, this is the package, these are the products, you have to take them all together. Why is that? What is the reasoning behind that approach, by technology providers? And as a local provider or a potential for some of our audience, they might be software developers thinking now that, okay, perhaps we could do something and develop something for the African market. What should they do differently? Why is the package as it is currently? And then can it be customized? And what can we do differently?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. Yeah. Now, looking at a lot of the global providers, sometimes when you make the platform, you make it as a whole, as a package. It's just like getting a car, a four-seater car, then you say, I only use 2 seats. So you cannot tell the manufacturer, remove the 2 seats, I'll only go with 2 because it was made as a package. So sometimes you find yourself in that you are getting a whole platform. It has so many good things, but based on the market, on the market, you actually don't need all of that. But then you find that whatever you have been given, you cannot remove part of it and say, I only want this, because from the word go, it was made as a full package. It was made as one platform. So most of the time that becomes a challenge, but also what we have tried to do, and also what I've seen other providers doing, they try to separate it. For example, you might find a platform, they have put aside things like CRM, the affiliates, where they now charge you separately. But there are some platforms that counts as one. Regardless whether you shall use it or not, it counts as part of the platform. Sometimes they do that because it has worked somewhere else and it helped them somewhere else, and then now they decided to now have that as one. But what we try to do in terms of the local development, we try to, first of all, to have the basics right. A customer can come, they can sign up, they can place a bet, they can fund up their wallets, they can withdraw their cash. That's the basic. Then now from there, innovate around it in a way that it can be separated. In a way that we can say, I'll just have the basic features. Then later, if need be, I'll add up things on top of it. Because also these are the additional things on top of it. It also increases your costs. The hosting fees, the support fees might have to go high because the team doing your support, they now have to look at so many things. So for the African setup is we have done that. We started from the basic. As we are growing up, we focused on that. Then the rest of the things we added after we got the basic right. So that gave us an opportunity to have that as a separate product, because we started from the basic until we got it right. Then other things now we have managed to have it as an add-on on top of the basics. That way it enables us to have a full separation of the packages.
Right. Fine. So what I hear, Phil, is that you have taken into consideration as a local provider, for instance, some of the challenges that global providers generally, have. The analogy of the car you gave is, fantastic and spot on. Some of them will say, yes, it's a full package. But again, like you said, you can't start with the framework instead of buying. It depends on the car you're buying. You don't necessarily need to start out with a G-Wagon. You can start out with, a smaller car, a Toyota, and then grow from there, So having considered that you have taken all of this into consideration, and I believe that there are a number of local providers, not many, but there are a few of them. And as someone who has worked Pan-African, who offers your solution Pan-African, why don't we have more operators going with or patronizing local providers? And is there still a dependency, even as a local provider, on some of these global brands for some of your services, for instance?
Yeah, let me start with your latest question. Yes, there's still a lot of dependency on the global provider. I'll say we have not managed to have everything 100% African. Things like the fields, we rely heavily on the global brands. The global brands, they also have very good casino games that we also rely on them. So to some points, we rely on them for content, we rely on them for data, but what we now try to do is to channel it in a way that is usable to the African market. So we get their content, we get their data, but then we model it in a way that it fits the market. So we cannot say we can learn on our own 100%. We are heading there, but right now we are not yet there. But we are looking forward to where we'll have all this content very localized, all this content available without us having to rely on them. But the fact we also have to appreciate the good work they've done. They've spent a lot working with some of those data, and some of the content that we get from them, they're very premium. That may take us a bit of more time for us to get there. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So now, let's get to the solution aspect of things, right? As an operator, existing, who's struggling, or new, just entering markets, African markets, what would you say are some of the key considerations in selecting that you must bear in mind in selecting your provider? I know that we've mentioned a few of them, but I feel like we should touch on this a bit more, just narrow down, onto this. Adriano, do you want to tell us from your experience the challenges we've had, and then the victories we've won? What are the key considerations?
Yeah, this is probably the best question. So I've had the opportunity to do both across Africa. I've done projects where we built our own platform. I've done projects where we've gone third party, and I've done projects where we did a hybrid, where we took a third party platform, and then we took on dedicated resources, right, to adapt the third party to the localization and the innovation that we needed, right? And my strongest advice is, honestly, is really finding the platform or the partner, right, that you can collaborate with as a partnership, right? that allows you to potentially grow together. The reason why I say that is because ultimately you as the operator are going to define the strategy, and you're the one that's going to come up with the together with the platform, but you're the one that with the clients and how the clients interact with your product, you're going to determine what the client wants, what the innovation is going to be, and you're going to be putting those ideas forward to the platform, and they're the ones that have to ultimately implement that. Then the speed at which it's done, the way in which it's done, and how you can differentiate yourself is what's going to make a difference, because you really need to have that innovation and differentiation in today's market to succeed. So 10, 15 years ago, the market wasn't as mature as it is today. Today, the market's incredibly mature with some very, very strong brands in each country, right? Whether you're looking at Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, where we are, there's very, very strong brands. So in order to succeed, you've got to be able to have get the fundamentals right. And then you've got to ask yourself, what is it that I have that's going to differentiate me from the other operators? Because our odds in Africa are incredibly competitive, right? Simply because we know that the operators are working on, higher margins compared to Europe, and multiple bets, which means that our individual over rounds or our odds for the customer are very good, right? So it's great for the customer, but that means my point is you can't lower your odds any higher, right? Our odds are already at the point where if you're offering, the odds, I can only match them. I can't really offer better. So I think Philip's nodding there, so he's identified this as well. So then if you've got the same odds and you've got the same payment provider and we've got the same platform, what's differentiating you is innovation and service and marketing, right? And if you're bringing that innovation, it's implementing it together, which will give you that differentiator. So I would say focus on partners with your platform that that you can drive innovation together and find a differentiator that will let you stand out and that you can market and build a brand on.
Right, fantastic. Thank you for that. Phil, whilst you address that, one other thing that came to mind that I feel, we need to highlight as part of this is also, not just acquiring the customer, but customer retention as well, the lifetime value of customers. Where does this sit? Is this a key consideration, for operators to have at the back of their mind? Because if you own the customer, you own everything. You own the world practically. If you own their data. Now, a key consideration, or rather a key clause that we find that we always have to highlight to our clients is data ownership, customer ownership, the lifetime value of customers, So yes, again, what are the key considerations that operators should have at the back of their mind when selecting providers?
Thank you. I'll echo what Diana has said. One of the key things that we need to look at is, first of all, the basics. Let's have the basics right. The customers, they can easily onboard, they can easily fund their wallet, access their wallets, and they can easily place a bet. From there, that way it gives you an equal edge with the rest. In a way that we can say you now have the ability to catch up with the rest. Then from there, we also need to look at the extra tools on the platform that will help you retain the customers. Because once they come in, we now need to see what else can we do to retain them. And having a partner who will offer you a level of customization is also another key thing. They can have the core platform remain as is, but then they should give you ability to do some customization. This can be maybe things like the bonus engine, things like the UX. That way, it enables you to brand out yourself. It enables you to add a unique feature to what you already have, and it also allows you to do your own retention campaigns, to do your own retention strategy. And also another key thing that you also need to look at is the stability of the platform. We rather have a platform that has few things but is very stable, rather than having a platform that has a lot but it is not stable. So we also look at the stability of the platform. How stable is the platform? Is it able to handle a lot of traffic in a weekend where there's a lot of games? How will it behave? What is the latencies? Is it stable enough for me to bring people on board? And also in regards to that, I've seen a very key thing, mostly for the Kenyan market. You find that a customer will come, place a bet on a halftime market, knowing that this bet needs to be settled at X time, then immediately I'll place a bet on the game that is starting immediately. So also when they don't find that flexibility of the platform in terms of the settlement, in terms of what is there, they lose confidence, because on their side they have planned, I'll place a bet at this time, it should be settled at this time, then immediately I withdraw my money, either do this or immediately I place another bet on another market. So also that stability of the platform plays a very key role. And also part of the customization that we need to look at is also how adaptable is the platform to the payment providers. We have found cases where the platform is not that flexible when it comes to the integration with the payment providers. And also now, when coming to the African market, some telcos, they experience a lot of downtime in terms of payment. How do you handle the payment failures? Do you have a manual way you can do automatic reconciliation or something of the sort, so that you are not stuck and there's an issue from the telco, whereas there's a way that you can resolve that. Finally, I'll look at how the platform is flexible to the regulatory monitoring. Some countries, they are strict in terms of the regulatory data. Some, they require you to submit real-time data. Some, they have their own ways of doing that. And that's the thing that you also want to look at, because you don't want to find yourself in the wrong side of the law and being shut down when you've already done a lot to bring that platform to IT. So those are the things that I'll look at.
Thank you so much, Phil. In fact, that was quite a bit, a very important point about stability of the platform, the ability to introduce customization, branding, integration with payment provider. And then you touched on, towards the end, compliance and regulatory framework. So I'm going to come to you, Adriano. One thing we know about the African regulatory landscape is, regulators want to know, unlike what you find in European markets where, the systems, or rather the infrastructure, actually supports proper reporting. The regulators do not need to integrate into the platform to get transparent data. But that seems to be the case in Africa. And we're bringing platforms from global providers who are not used to this requirement, the level of regulatory integration, for lack of a better expression, that is required in Africa. Not just in we see it in Nigeria, we see it coming up in South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, different markets, across Africa. Where do we go? How do we adapt to regulatory framework, in different markets? Maybe speak to the Nigerian market, your experience, and then the Kenyan market. I mean, you've got experience across Africa as well.
Yeah, correct. Great point, Fedeke. And I think a lot of operators existing are having this challenge, right? The regulatory framework is taking shape more and more every year across each country in Africa, right? We've seen the development of the regulatory frameworks mature more and more. And I think and it's only going to continue that way, right? So the challenges we have is exactly getting the right level of reporting, because the regulatory frameworks, and this actually comes back to you. You understand this better than all of us. It's the interpretation of these regulatory requirements, and how you interpret them that defines what you have to implement. And it's not, there isn't a, there isn't a playbook for the gaming industry that tells you this is how the regulatory requirements are and this is the taxation you have to pay. Each individual regulator is tailoring it, or localizing it to their territory. And you've got to be able to then have a platform that can extract the right data in order for you to do that. So just going back to Philip's point, right? It's all connected, because you've got to look at, when you're integrating with the payments, you've got to do your reconciliation of payments every day, right? Because exactly the payments, how they're connected, and then that information has to go into your platform, which essentially goes into your reporting. And now that reporting, the big question is, do you want to have a team of resources pulling out data and working on data sheets all day, in order to produce a report, which ultimately is going to come with errors because it's done by manually, and there's many people working on it, working on data to produce a report? Or can you just customize the report where, you tell Philip, these are the requirements I need for my regulatory requirements. Could you just build a report so that I press this button every week, and at the end of the month I produce the report and I send it to the regulator, right? Mm-hmm. Ultimately, that's what you want. But there is a real challenge, because you've got to then implement that. If you're doing the withholding tax, you've got to implement it into your bed slip. You've got to calculate it. Then are you absorbing the cost, or are you passing that cost over onto the customer? These are all elements that you need to implement into your platform and customize them. And if you're Pan-African, you're doing this for Nigeria, Kenya, Zambia, and South Africa, that's 4 different configurations for 4 different territories that your platform provider has to build for you and customize for you. So I think that kind of just puts it into perspective, right, of the challenges, but also the importance of my point previously. If you have a good relationship with your platform provider, and you know that platform provider understands these points and these regulatory requirements, then it's possible for them to implement them and do them. You could spend weeks, if not months, with other platform providers who may not be familiar with how it works and how to calculate it, and getting them to implement that, test it, and roll it out can be challenging, right? So really good question, and I'm sure it's going to become more and more a topic of discussion and focus, because the regulatory requirement is becoming more and more, the frameworks and the implementation are starting to happen now, including the automation and the integration with the regulatory systems as well. So these are not anymore nice to haves, these are must haves that you have to do if you're going to be compliant.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Adriano. That more or less captures it, succinctly. But I'm just going to come to Phil as well, because, you've got at least 12 operators that you're serving, across Kenya, Malawi, Zambia, Uganda, Tanzania, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, and then DRC. Now, this is a confluence of developing, emerging markets. So how do you cope with the diverse, different regulatory framework, regulatory reporting that needs to happen for each and every one of this market as a provider,
Yeah, that is very interesting question. It took us a bit of time before we were able to get it right. Initially, we had a lot of problem getting that right. But after we did a bit of research, we realize a common factor across, and that is the type of reports that they need. They're all similar, but in different format, where you find that across they will all need GDR reports, net cash flow reports, and they'll also need a real-time activities of the players. But the reporting formats totally different. They all have very different protocols on how you submit the data. There are some that you do a manual submission at the end of every month. There are some like Kenya, you do a real-time. You have to integrate with their APIs to do a real-time submission of data. Same thing to Uganda. But the rest is a bit manual process where you just generate the report, then they have to submit. They have to submit to the regulator. But amidst all this, we were able to come up with a way that we could easily streamline the platform as part of the customization that you're doing, in a way that based on the configuration of where it has been deployed, we are able to do both a real-time submission and also a manual submission. But still, I'll not say that we have figured it out 100%, but for the markets that you're already in, that has already been streamlined. We are waiting for the next challenge where we shall go to a market that things were totally separate from what we have. I'm sure that will be a new challenge that we now have to tackle that then. But for now, in the regions that we are in, we have managed to have that all streamlined. And also, what helped us, it was the research that we did. Now we will be able to pick up exactly what are the common factors that all these are looking across. And an advantage that we had, I believe Kenya was among the first countries to do this. And a lot of these other countries, they are copying what Kenya has done. So it gives us an advantage that we already have the know-how, we already have the idea, so that if you now go to other countries, you are able to get exactly this is what they are looking for. The format might be different, the reporting time might be not the same, but the basic concept you get is more similar to what we have in Kenya here.
Okay. Thank you for that, Phil. I see that there are questions. Yeah, I see your hand is up, Adriano. You're going to, I'm coming to you. We have questions, but before I go into the questions, okay, maybe let me allow Adriano make his additional comments, and then we'll take some of the questions that we have. Yeah.
Fadeki, actually, no, I was looking at the question as well. And while we were on that topic, I thought the question was very much related to the question that you asked. Yes. So I was going to just add something. If it's okay, I was going to just add something for Unity, who was asking the question, right, about, for smaller brands who can't afford to build their own platform, and they can't get their third party to build it, what recommendation to stay competitive does she have? Or do we have? I was going to answer that question.
Yes. Okay.
Should I go ahead?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Do you want to do that later?
No, okay. Please go ahead.
I was going to say, look, these are challenges that we're going to face and that we will continue to face between operators, right? But that should not stop you as a business and an operator in driving that operational innovation and getting your team to be motivated and come up with ideas that you can implement, right? It's one of the challenges you got is that your team constantly saying, wow, we got this great idea and it doesn't get implemented. But don't stop it from happening, because there are ways that you can still implement innovation even outside of your platform, right? A perfect example is on a project I did. We were having challenges in implementing the retention with VIPs, right? And getting your platform provider to implement exactly the flow that we wanted. But it didn't stop us from doing it. So all we did requested was, okay, well, if you're not going to implement and develop it into the back office, into the system, right, request something else. We requested a betting history report, right, that we could download on a daily basis. With the betting history report, we could pass that over onto a data analyst who could then do all the analysis with part of the flow, and we could then credit our VIPs and our customers, manually utilizing the functions that were available on the back office. So my point is, don't try and force through something. If your platform provider is not doing it for you, don't be discouraged that it's not going to happen. Find ways to make it happen, because the most important thing is your customer, your retention, and making sure that you're delivering. And if the platform's not doing it, there are other ways you can do it. At the end of the day, you own the data, which we touched on previously, right? So try to take also ownership of your CRM flows, your segments, right? Because this is incredibly valuable for you as an operator. And all of that you implement, even actually, implementing it into the platform and automating it is great because of the automation. But it doesn't mean that your customers, if they are getting, if they're trading with you from a Monday to Sunday, then you did your analysis on Monday because you get your betting history and you're crediting them by Monday night or Tuesday. Your customers are still going to be very happy that you're giving them bonuses based on what they did the week before, and you can do that outside of your platform. So my point is, rely on the platform 100%, but if you're not getting it out of the platform, don't be discouraged. Find ways to do it internally with your team as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. In fact, that is, masterclass material. That's Adriano just giving it away, strategies that he's using internally in their business. And that brings me, your touching on data analysis brings me to a very key matter or topic, right? The incursion of AI, because we are in an AI revolution. It is happening before our eyes. It is not taking years. It's not taking decades. We don't even know how quickly this is happening. We just know that it is evolving, it is getting better, and it is taking over, right? So with technology and with AI agent, an abundance of AI agent that I can sit with in being my very ignorant self, to sit down and say, AI agent, build me a platform. Is this a threat? One. Two, traditional providers. That's one. And then two, operators as users. Should we be thinking, build me an AI system, from scratch? Or should we be thinking strategically in terms of the use of AI? So those are my questions for you. Phil, maybe you go first, because this is from tech provider where AI is threatening. Is it a threat to the developers, at this point? It would be good to know. Or, how are developers viewing this, and the fact that operators can access AI, artificial intelligence, directly?
That's a good question. I've been asked that question a number of times. But from my experience, at the moment, AI cannot take over developers' role. Maybe in the future it may, but right now AI relies a lot on them, more than them relying on the AI. And for me, AI can be a very good tool if you can use it to analyze the data, analyze your patterns, analyze your trends. And to just add up also on what Adriano said, your platform provider might not give you AI tools, but as long as you have access to the data, these are the data that you can download, feed it into it, and now you are able to get the patterns of your players also the platform. And they are very good tools that you can actually use to know how are you performing, who are your VIP's customer, what is their trends, what do they like, what time do they like to bet. How do you engage them more? How do you retain them more? So these are tools that we can easily use AI to do, and they'll give us a lot of accurate data. It is fast. We can benefit a lot from it. On our side, we have also used AI in terms of security. We realize, especially with the African market, there's a lot of bonus hunters. We have used AI a lot to help us detect some of those patterns by studying the data, the IP addresses, the devices, and the rest of the things. They are able to easily help us. Those things that we cannot easily do from the code, we are able to pick such trends up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Philip believes that AI is, whilst supporting, development and growth, it's not yet a threat to providers and developers, and is still relying heavily on them. Okay, all right, I hear you. Over to you, Adriano. Should operators be thinking, AI agent, build me my own platform, I don't want to deal with a developer, or should they be more strategic? And in what areas and how can they best leverage on AI as well?
Perfect. So I echo what Phil is saying. Absolutely. I think AI is not going to replace Phil or his platform. These platforms are incredibly complex systems, right, with many different components that you have to combine all together, right? So I think the AI can be utilized as Phil has suggested. You can use it as a component within your platform, right, to improve, especially anything with regards to data, right? So Phil touched rightly so on the CRM side of things, right? So the retention, you can definitely use it on the data. I would just take it one step further. We recently did over the last couple of years, we tapped into the AI and we implemented it on three fronts. We implemented it on the CRM front, on the retention and the predictive modeling of which customers would churn. But then we also implemented it on the personalization. So when customers come to your website, the information that they're seeing obviously is, we're all seeing the same thing, right? You got your upcoming, your pre-match today, next 3 days, or you go into your menu and you can pick which sports you want. And we felt that the AI can help people to implement that personalization, that when you come based on your betting patterns, right? Allow it to do what it does on Netflix or on your other apps, right? The information you're seeing is relevant based on what you've been betting in the past, right? So I think the personalization element of it is also very strong. And the last bit I would add, as well as the personalization, is the recommendation. So also, once you know what customers are doing, you've got all of these events based on what they're putting in their bet slip. If I'm betting on Premier League Arsenal, but I didn't choose Chelsea or another team, why not recommend that? As long as you can tell the AI that as long as the selection is, the customer made this selection, this it's this sport, it's this league, it's this team, and it's this odd, you can then find other similar options which they could potentially add without having to scroll back and forth. So I think the AI can be used all for what Phil mentioned, but as well as the personalization and recommendation models, I think are starting to take more and more, get more popular as well. And I know platforms and operators are starting to offer that now.
Right. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Adriano. And at this point, we're fast running out of time, but I can see questions in the chat box. So I'm going to go to that, take a few of that. For our participants and listeners, if you have a question and you want to ask, you can raise your hands at this point. I'd like to be able to take a few questions, maybe 2 or 3 before we round this up. But we've got this question, Adriano, and I think this is to you because it starts with Adriano's advice that an emerging operator should prioritize innovation and differentiation as a market penetration strategy resonates strongly with me. He recommended pursuing partnership arrangements with platform providers to accelerate time to market for new and innovative ideas. However, the challenge is that such partnerships are often unattractive to many platform providers, largely due to the relatively long investment gestation period in the African gaming market. That's very correct. As a result, most providers prefer a more transactional model. They build the platform, hand it over to the operator, and begin charging minimum guarantees immediately after commercial launch. This approach creates friction when iterative improvements are needed. At each point, when critical changes could enhance the offering, platform providers tend to prioritize cost-benefit considerations, which can slow down or even constrain innovation. The critical question, therefore, is how does an emerging operator effectively navigate these complexities while still delivering on innovation and speed to market? Very packed question, but the reality of many operators.
Perfect. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a great question that captures what we've discussed so far, right? And so this is the question from Prince Adesina, right?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. So Prince, I'll try and answer your question. I think we've already tapped on it, and you're absolutely right. And I think Philip kind of answered it earlier on, right? Which was get the basics right? So now we're all on the same playing field, correct? Once you've done that, you need to bring in the innovation. Now, when we bring in the innovation, we don't mean building a strategic innovation. It's identifying as part of your strategy what can differentiate you as a brand, right? And these are things that you can implement with your platform provider. So if we had to use an example, let's localize it for Nigeria, right? We know that Nigeria, if you had, for example, if we started from Phil's platform, let's get the basic right, where we have a platform that works across our customers. We know that it has the reach, we have the odds, and we have the payments, and so we're set up now. What we need is the innovation. Now, depending on your market, Nigerian market is huge on booking codes, right? For example. So looking at the way the market works here is, there's a strong opportunity when you're looking at people share booking codes, which means if I'm sharing booking codes, there's a community feeling around we're sharing together. Can we potentially win together, right? And so what you can look at is, what can I implement that instead of spending more money on marketing, right, shouting that I have what everybody else has, how can I create something that's unique to my brand that I can give back to the customer directly in order to keep that customer? Because if I'm rewarding the customer, which is the most important part of my strategy, I've spent the money bringing him in. Now let me hold on to him. And there are very simple key features that you can implement that will give back to the customer internally and make him feel valued, and that they will also appreciate. So I think this innovation doesn't have to be innovation like creating something like 1UP or 2UP, right? Which is applies to everybody. It's actually finding ways to tap into the emotional side of your customers to make them feel valued. So I would say you can drive that innovation, and that's something that your platform provider would accommodate or should accommodate for you. That would be the best advice I could give now. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Adriano. Phil, do you want to add to that? Or I think I have another question. Yes?
Yeah, let me just add a bit. Also, okay. It's good to look at the terms that your platform provider is giving you in terms of customer development. I will not advise them doing everything for you, then they hand over to you and they only do support. You find yourself locked somewhere. But also, before you go into the platform, look at what terms are they giving you in terms of customization. Is it okay with you or not? That way it gives you a new way to add a few things here and there. But before then, you can also try to see if the innovation that you want, can you do it outside the platform? Can you just rely on the data from the platform and do your own innovations around, just like how Adriano says? Then if not, look for a way that the platform provider gives you a way to customize it, or they give you from the terms that you have with them, they give you a way that you can be able to add a feature or two on top of that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just to add to what Phil just said, looking at the terms, what does your SLA say as well, your service level agreements? You can negotiate well ahead of time, certain terms and conditions, which means that your provider has to be on their toes. But if your provider if the agreement or the terms that you're under which you're partnering or operating is such that, we just provide you this service as is, it's your responsibility, it's your obligations, and it's a very one-sided arrangement, then you're going to struggle. But more attention should be paid to your SLAs, to the conditions of customization, to development, and the kind of support you get. The turnaround time as well. That's what the service level agreement, essentially addresses. It's very important. So for operators that have signed agreements, just have this at the back of your mind that at the point of renewal, you can call for a reassessment of the terms under which you are operating right now. So to go back to the questions, if you have a question, you can feel free to raise your hand. We'll unmute you so that you can ask your question. There's a question I saw. I guess Moyi is replicating this for one of our participants. For a new B2B provider entering Africa, what practical signals will build operator trust fastest? Is it local presence, speed of delivery, payment expertise, regulatory support, or something else? I think this is to you, Phil. Is it to Phil? Really? It's from a B2B entering the market. What signals, what are the things that operators have demanded of you, Phil?
The most common has been customization, where they want to have their own UX. They want to give you their own design and tell you the end product you want it to look like this. So that has been one of the biggest asks, or one of the frequent questions we have gotten. And also we have also the normal things like the payment aggregation and also integration with the regulatory APIs. But the most common thing has been the UX. They want you to get the UX right, and they want their own branding. They want the platform to look like them and not like anyone else.
Fantastic, thank you. Just to go to another question, Aditya is asking, hi, what are some of the things you focus on when adapting a third-party platform for this market? I think this has been addressed more or less, by our speakers, but if anyone wants to just very quickly highlight that or touch on that, that would be great. No, Adriano, Phil?
Can you repeat the question? I'm looking for it in the chat.
Oh yes, it's in the Q&A actually. What are some of the things you focus on when adapting a third-party platform for this market? He didn't exactly specify which market, but let's assume, the African market.
When adapting a third-party platform from my own experience and from what I've experienced with the people that I've dealt with. Number one will be customization. How easy is it to customize the platform? And how easy is it to be usable, mostly in the low-end devices? That being a majority of your customers, I believe that should be the key focus. Is the platform easily accessible by the low-end devices? For me, if that has been gotten right, regardless of how it looks like, but as long as it can work on a low-end phone, then the basics are right. The rest of the things you can see if you can improve it later.
Right. Thank you very much for that. Now, AI is already changing how work gets done in gaming by raising the bar for quality and insight. But full replacement is not realistic because games sit at the intersection of technology, creativity, and human experience. Okay, so I guess Adeola is just confirming and reaffirming what Phil said. I know she's a data analyst and AI person as well. So, I guess you all think the future is far. AI it's still, you guys still have an edge. All the tech bros and techists still have an edge, for a while more to come. Now, Tayo says, when we talk about must-have features for an African gaming platform, the conversation often gravitates towards mobile-first design, local lingua, and betting patterns and USD payment integration, as though these alone constitute a localization strategy. But feature prioritization is ultimately a market maturity question. A platform entering Nigeria in 2026 is operating in a very different context from one entering Ethiopia or Francophone West Africa for the first time. So beyond the baseline table stakes features everyone agrees on, what are the 2 or 3 product decisions that most operators get wrong at the build stage, specifically because they are applying a market agnostic framework to a continent that punishes that thinking? Oh, wow. Is there a meaningful distinction between features that drive acquisition versus features that drive retention in African markets? Or are platforms still conflating the two in their product roadmap? Okay, gentlemen, over to you. So the question, just to drill it down, is the distinction. What are the distinctive features, 2 or 3, that operators should have and bear in mind, beyond all of the very common localization features that we agree on, and the difference between your retention, acquisition versus retention strategy in African markets? It's a lot packed into one question, I know. Yeah.
Maybe I could help dissolve it a little bit. No, absolutely, it's a lot, but I think it's incredibly important. Again, it's Pan-African discussion, but I think we have to really look at the localization, that this isn't just language and fundamentals, right? It goes way beyond that. It goes to, you got to look at betting behavior, and I can, having done it in various countries, the betting behavior in Kenya is different to that of Nigeria, which is different to that of Ghana, right? And we're right. So you got to look at the betting behaviors. Phil kind of touched on it. It's the UX habits, right? There are certain patterns within the local territories in terms of UX habits. So it's not what you want. It's actually what are the habits that the end users in that territory are used to, right? What habits do they have when engaging online with the betting? Then you've also got to look at the market preferences, right? Because there are different preferences in different markets. I mean, when we were doing the betting originally in Kenya, we're going back 2013-14, right? The success of SportPesa was very much on the back of the jackpot, right? So there was a preference, it was the jackpot, boom, right? So at that time, the preference was jackpot. So then, of course, you got to look at the other fundamentals, which is the trust signals, right? You're entering the market. What trust signals are you giving your customer? And then there's that, let's call it cultural logic. I tapped on it before. Nigeria, that cultural logic is very much tipsters, influencers, booking code, which you don't really have in Kenya, for example, right? But then in Kenya, you don't have all the challenges of payments because you got Safaricom and M-Pesa, which is just 99.999% working, right? So I hope that helps. You got to look at all of these aspects in order to determine then the features.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adriano. Ladies and gentlemen, we are effectively running out of time. We've run out of time, actually. We try to keep this at 1 hour, 30 minutes. I would like for you to just appreciate our speakers. They have shared without holding back. They have educated us. Use your reaction button, I beg of you. You can applaud them. Yes, you can send them, your appreciation, for this very insightful conversation. They have shared without holding back, right? And it has been great indeed. Thank you so much for coming. Phil, Adriano, it has been great. I am almost feeling like we should have a part 2, for this technology talk. This is the first time we're talking technology on Slack Africa. We will revisit it again, definitely very soon. And what I'd like to say is that today's session has reinforced a very simple but critical point. Technology decisions are no longer operational. They are very strategic. The choice of platform, the structure of provider relationship that you have, and alignment of your products to market reality will continue to define which operators succeed and scale, and the operators that continue to struggle with avoidable inefficiencies. Built for Africa is not just a theme. It is actually a standard that the industry must collectively begin to demand, right? It will take time, but the earlier we start and recognize the need for this, the better we become. We have providers like Phil. This is not even a promotion of any particular platform, but it is a recognition that perhaps we should start looking inwards, finding solutions that are fit for market, understanding that one size platform does not work in Africa's diverse and evolving markets. And more importantly, every operator must become deliberate and informed in your technology and provider decisions. Slack Africa, it is always our focus to support this industry with practical, relevant, and market-specific insight across legal, regulatory, operational, technology, product, marketing areas. We also know that sometimes these conversations, we only just scratch the surface, right? The reality is that we cannot, in one session, complete or exhaust the conversation that needs to be had in a single webinar. For this reason, we have been getting requests and we have been listening, right? We will be introducing a series of focused masterclasses designed to go beyond, scratching the surface like we have done here, or trying to fit so much into an hour, 30 minutes conversation. We'll be having discussions that will go into practical frameworks, real case studies, and actionable guides for operators and stakeholders. Stay connected, stay tuned, follow us, and, watch our pages. Very soon, we'll be launching some of these training sessions. Please do well to join them. We'll be bringing speakers. From time, for those of you that have followed us from inception, we always go out of our way to look for those who are knowledgeable, who are experts, who know well-grounded knowledge, in-depth analysis that can bring them to you. And those are the people who will still be bringing to you in those masterclasses and those trainings. On that note, I'd like to thank everyone for participating, for starting with us and staying to the end. Adriano, thank you so much for coming today, for your time, for your insight. We truly appreciate you. Thank you, Adriano. And Phil.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been a fantastic session.
Thank you. And Phil, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you in Kenya very soon.